Oh, my mic's not on. So awkward. It's the worst thing in the world, J. Crow, when you start a live stream and your microphone's not turned on. It's like being at the Olympics, going to the hurdles and just hitting the first one, just your face right in front of it.
Hello. Sorry, this is like an alpha. But don't worry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Hello, welcome back to GameSpot's coverage of E3 2013. You're watching Stage 2 on e3.gamespot.com and also on twitch.tv/GameSpot E3 Stage 2. I'm very happy to be joined by J. Crow, Creative Director of Bohemia Interactive, who's going to show off Arma 3, the sickest looking first-person shooter for all you guys who enjoy playing the more realistic type of war experience.
Yeah, that's right. We're just coming out of our alpha, so a little bit more of a subset of our normal game. We were kind of infantry focused before, but today we have the beta to show you, which is a bit more like classic Arma, I guess.
Okay, excellent. So the alpha's been there for a while. It's been a public alpha. I know I'm right because I know I'm on it, but I don't feel like I had to jump through many hoops to do it.
Yeah, it came out in March. We've been pretty happy with it so far. It's a first kind of experience for Bohemia to release in this kind of way, getting the public and the community involved straight up in development.
For sure.
We've been happy with how it's going so far and really happy to be getting our beta out later in the month.
Excellent. Well, I've got a bunch of questions myself, but if you have any questions for Jay, please tweet me at Danny O'Dwyer or put them in the GameSpot chat and I will make sure I relay them to it. If we can have a look at the gameplay here. So this is a completely new mission to the beta version. What exactly is going on here?
Well, Joris, the project lead, is behind the scenes playing Combined Arms. So similar to the alpha where we had 4 single-player showcase missions for testing the different kinds of technology and presenting the new features of the game, we have 4 showcases for beta as well. This is kind of, I don't know, it represents sort of the heart of what the beta is about, the move towards a bit more firepower, a few more logistical options. So here we're getting support from a helicopter gunship, which you can see engaging targets at the base, and in a few minutes we might see an armoured wheeled vehicle that'll be supporting the attack as well.
So for people who aren't familiar with the series, obviously Arma has its roots. A lot of you guys were working on Operation Flashpoint, that series, all those years ago. Arma 1 then on PC, of course. Arma 2 was very successful, and then with 3, it's it's more of a simulation based experience, obviously. With the sort of, do you feel like it's a simulation based? Do you like pigeonholing your game like that, or?
Well, come up and they're not exactly sure what the game is all about. I would describe it as a combined arms military game.
Okay.
Definitely, the thing that makes this unique is the elements of simulation that we have. Lots of sometimes quite simple things working together that create the complexity, that make the challenge of the game, that make it rewarding to master. But I would say, we're all gamers at heart. The guys back in Prague working on the game and in Brno, we all love playing games. We want to make a game, but we have a history with this series, and Arma 3 is a continuation of what we're good at, what we're best at, but maybe with a nice new lick of paint on it and a few new interesting features.
Yeah, quite a nice lick of paint on this, I imagine.
Sorry, that's an understatement. The programmers would kill me.
Yeah, it's an incredibly beautiful game. As some of the screenshots you guys released a number of months ago, almost, it's essentially photorealism at some stage. How much of an onus is put on in Arma, and how important is it into you guys realizing your vision?
Well, I think it's definitely an important thing for us to have in the game. Everyone, when they see Arma 3 as compared to Arma 2, loves the lighting, and that's based on the real world research we got and do. The lighting's based on real values from Mediterranean countries. So it's important, but it's definitely not the be-all and end-all. Like, we could do more, but we have to save some performance for other parts of the game. We do a lot more than many other games. The terrains are enormous. The level of detail and the quality that the artists put into their work, that takes a lot of performance. So it's a balance. We want to have a game that offers a lot for the players to do, but we want it to look nice as well.
So what's the setup for Arma 3 in terms of its narrative? Where is it based, and who is involved in the conflict?
Well, during the alpha and the beta, we've been focusing on what we call like just generic factions. So at the moment, it's blue against red, and the beta introduces green, which is the third faction, which we see it as offering the people making missions at home a few more options. We haven't talked so much about the context and the story since we first announced the game in 2011. As we get closer to release in Q3 this year, we have a few more details. But to cut a long story short, the player is a NATO soldier, just a regular soldier. He's not, captain of anything. He's on an observation force based on the island of Stratus. And, we have our roots in Operation Flashpoint, so you can kind of guess that maybe something is going to happen to him and the other factions play a part. We'd like to talk more about that later in the year. But I guess if you want some sort of analog, it's closer to the simplicity of Operation Flashpoint, like going all the way back to 2001. A simple factions fighting each other, and the player not being a hero, but just being part of a team, working with his squad mates and getting more and more responsibility as he progresses through the campaign, which is also a way that we're hoping to teach players how to use it. One of the things that we know is there's a lot of features, a lot of complexity in Arma 3. The last thing we want to do is take any of that out, but definitely what we want to do is introduce it slowly to the players, let them get comfortable with handling a weapon, moving around, basic squad command, and then as you move through the campaign, you get more and more responsibility, more options to use, and hopefully more rewarding gameplay to take part in.
There's always been a lot of sort of specialized control systems required in Arma, because obviously it's at least in terms of the generic first-person shooter that many people are used to, there's obviously a lot more commands required, keystrokes and whatnot, and then in terms of using the vehicles from the helicopters to the landcraft, also a lot to learn. Do you find it's a challenge to try and teach the player all of these, or do you think that somebody can enjoy Arma 3 by just specializing in one maybe in particular?
Well, I think challenge is a good word. We've just added a new game mode called Challenges, and we hope through this kind of playable content that we'll be able to introduce simple things like movement and shooting to the player, like very simple competitive against the clock gameplay where we go through and shoot down targets. Maybe Joris can take a look at it later on, but really Arma 3 offers you, and Arma generally always to be able to do, and when you're given that all at once, it is confusing, it is daunting. The challenge, as I was saying before, is to introduce it slowly, prove to the player that it's useful, like our adjusted stances, getting behind cover, keeping your head down so it doesn't get blown off, showing to the player that this is a different key binding from what you're used to perhaps, but once you know how to use it, it offers a kind of a depth that other games simply don't have, and we can't ignore that. That's definitely what makes our games unique. Will
you guys continue to support third-party hardware in the way you have in the past? I know TrackIR has been an important part, different various types of joypads. Is there any thought about Oculus Rift support?
Well, we have a dev kit in the Brno studio, and we're playing with that. Like, it seems like a really, really good fit, the Oculus Rift with our game. Like, we have as Joris is showing now, we have the full body in-game, so when you look down, you're not just a floating camera, you have legs and arms. So when you have something like the Oculus Rift or TrackIR, which has been a great servant to the game since it came out, it gives you that engagement with the game that maybe some other games don't have yet. It's not something that we're going to be, officially supporting for our release in Q3.
Sure.
We've been talking to the guys, a great bunch of guys here at E3 from Oculus Rift. We're talking to them, get a few more dev kits for our programmers back home, get it in game, see what we can do. But yeah, it's definitely exciting technology along with TrackIR.
Cool. Watch this space then. So it's interesting. Whenever I've played these games, it's always been a very solitary experience for me. I enjoy sort of immersing myself in the world and spending time carrying out the missions. In terms of multiplayer and cooperative, what are you guys doing in that space?
Well, multiplayer is one of the most important aspects of our games. Like it's what gives our game the longevity. Like I'm a big fan of single player. Like every other game I play, it's all about the single player campaign. But with Arma, I think it's really important for us to get multiplayer right. Part of that work goes towards optimizing the netcode. One of our lead programmers back home is analyzing what we can do to make it run more smoothly, to reduce the lag for players. In the beta itself, we can look at our 2 co-op missions that we're adding on top of the 2 co-ops that were in alpha. We're taking a look. Yoris is just loading one up now called Defend Camino. Here, well, we can also take a look at the third faction that we're adding to the game, but
the greens.
Here, the greens.
I like that color.
Here, it's we're not reinventing the wheel. It's something like a horde mode gameplay. We have the green team that has their base and the blue team that has their base. The objective is to survive against the enemy attacks, adapt with planting mines and defending your base. But we do it in Arma style. So the things coming at you, attacking you, armored vehicles, helicopter gunships. It's going to be a real challenge to play. And the rub is you have to wait till the 7th wave, and there's a helicopter that comes to extract you, but there's only one. So human players are green and blue. By default, they're working together, they're helping each other out. But if you want to engage the blue team, or if the blues decide to stab you in the back, then suddenly you've got a PvP situation going on. And I don't know, it demonstrates the diversity of Arma's multiplayer content. Like, this is a game mode for a certain kind of player that likes a certain kind of game. Definitely the alpha, we've already seen mods made, like Wasteland, that cater to different kinds of scenarios. And here we can see we're running into the green base. So this is ours to defend.
It's interesting. A lot of what you're talking about is kind of, I imagine, when a lot of people, the sort of polish you have here. There was always a wonder whether you guys would try and maybe go down again, this is just silly categorizing for the sake of it, but maybe a more mainstream route, that perhaps you guys would like to get some more success like the big franchises that we see on consoles and whatnot. It seems here that you certainly have retained and are developing on all the core concepts of what Arma 2 is, but if you don't mind me saying, it's a bit of a backhanded compliment in terms of the production value, in terms of the UI, in terms of the layout of everything. It looks like a much more, I would say polished, but much more inviting experience perhaps than Arma 2 was, which to a lot of people, when they go into it, if they're not expecting that type of scenario, can be quite daunting.
Well, it's about time, isn't it? Like, I think it's always been such a sort of a rough diamond. The gameplay was there. Sometimes it was difficult to find. What we tried to do with Arma 3, I've said before, is keep the core gameplay, like identify what's best about our series, keep all of that, but take off the rough edges. Like, we've improved the radio protocol, like
the voice acting a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay,
so, a year ago, you go on internet forums, anytime you would bring up our game, it's always 2, move to that bush.
Yeah.
and that was ridiculous. And one of the things that we did when we came on to the Arma 3 project about a year and a half ago was to say, what really irritates people, what can we do to improve it? And we're really happy with things like the state of the radio protocol and even things like the presentation of the game, the front end, the UI. It's important. The first impression you make with a player, you're sort of making a promise to them. You're saying,
sure,
this game is legit, like this is a professional product, and then people give you, a bit more of a chance to prove why, and that's really important for Arma, to get into it, to play with your friends, to experiment with all of the different things that you can do. And it's only when you get to that stage that suddenly it clicks and you understand, this is what Arma's about. This is why I can't go back to a corridor shooter. This is why Operation Flashpoint completely broke me back in 2001. I couldn't play anything else.
Is there ever any limitations where you guys, like for gameplay reasons, decide to kind of hold back? Because Arma obviously is a series that's always pushed the boundaries in terms of realism when it comes to lighting, physics, graphics, of course. Is there ever a stage where you decide this might be something in real world battles that does happen, but for the sake of gameplay, we probably should not hone it back a bit?
Yeah, I think you have to make sensible choices. I mean, there's something called Ian Bogost. He's an American games writer and academic and critic. Like, he wrote a really interesting piece on simulation fever. I don't want to get too technical, but it really affected my way of thinking. He defines simulation as mapping the real world onto a set of mechanics. And simulation fever is when you do one thing but you don't do another.
I think,
and so when we do one thing, like for example, we have really realistic weapons models and they have bipods on them, and then we don't do another, like weapon resting. There's this discord between these two things, and it can really pop in people's minds, and it ruins everything for them. But we have a very small development team, only 70 guys. I just finished Assassin's Creed 2 recently, and it took me 3 hours to watch the credits at the end. We got a small team, like a bunch of guys. We have to be very careful about where we put our resources. And
you guys are working on 3 games at the moment as well, right?
I mean, 70 guys roughly on Arma 3, and then a bit of a Black Ops team on DEIXE standalone. And Take on Mars, of course, was announced today, which is basically someone's pet passion project.
Really?
Like very very small team, but a lot of love for that game.
Excellent. But that's a very good point. You find it a lot. You find it in sports games a lot. You find it in shooters and whatnot.
So we have to choose sensible things to simulate. Where there was a big conversation about like how we're balancing the game. Like we came out and we said we're hiring a guy to balance the game, and people sort of got a bit worried and thought, do these developers really think they're making StarCraft 2? And it's like, no, that's not what balance means for Arma 3. What it means is saying, what are we simulating? What else do we need to simulate so the game doesn't break itself? Like, nature balances itself. Like, this is why we would introduce something like our new fog technology. So if I'm in the bottom of the valley covered by fog, then this really overpowered helicopter gunship isn't able to see me. But we have to make that choice to add the fog and not something else.
Right.
So it's about making sensible decisions. Sometimes we make the wrong calls. Like,
and your community probably
we're
lets
not
you know.
perfect, and the community completely hammers us for it. And fair play to them. Like, they love the game, and they complain at us because they want it to be better.
Passionate.
I don't know. I hope everyone can sort of feel like we're trying to do the right thing for Arma 3, and the reception seems hopefully positive so far, and I hope you're enjoying it like yourself.
Absolutely, yeah. Arma's one of those games. I fixed up my rig back in October. I got a new PC rig. Nice. And the first games I bought on Steam was finally I can play Arma 2 now. So I got Arma 2, played Arma 2 for a couple of months, and then when the alpha came out I played a little bit, but unfortunately I had to leave the country away from my PC. Can I talk to you a little bit about your community? You guys had a little bit of drama a couple of, last year I guess.
The internet, there's always drama.
In relation to some of your employees who were, was it Cyprus?
Greece.
It was Greece, sorry, it was Greece. God, Greece can't get rid of drama at the moment, I suppose.
No, indeed.
With some of your guys who got detained, obviously, for what some people had thought was maybe taking photographs of military institutions. How are those guys doing? How the reception from the community, I thought was incredible. Obviously there was websites posted up. They made sure that all of us games journalists knew about it and were talking about it. Has that been resolved? How are those guys doing, and is there any legal action to be taken?
Officially it's still an ongoing process,
okay.
But which is why I'd want to be careful about
absolutely.
Much. But definitely I can just talk from a personal perspective. It's really, really great to have the guys back, and for them to be back with their families. So they're back at work. Maxell is making Altis splendid, and Ivan is working between Arma 3 and DEIXE, like just giving all of his skills to any project that needs his help. And it's just a real relief to have them back. There was definitely a period of uncertainty in development when we didn't know what was going on with the guys.
How did that affect you? Affect your team? Like you said, it's a relatively small team for a project like this, so you guys must all know each other.
I want to say like how. You've played on Strata. It's like it's such a distinct environment. Environment's a huge thing in Arma 3 generally, and the Mediterranean environment is very unique also for gaming. And I really want to say, like, I love the countryside and the architecture and the lighting of Greece, and it's great that we have something that's a really great representation. But we have chosen to make the islands now fictional. Like we're not set in Greece anymore. We're set in Stratus and Altus, and that was kind of because we lost a little bit of passion for representing sort of these real world places, and I guess that was the biggest impact on it in terms of the actual development. But I don't know, we just focus on the guys being back now and making the game as splendid as possible.
Excellent. You've been working on this now for quite a while. When are you guys releasing, and on what platforms?
Well, definitely PC Master Race. Q3 later this year is the closest we have in terms of any specific for the full release. The beta itself is 25th of June, so if you guys are in the alpha, everyone obviously automatically gets bumped through to the beta. You just log in at that time, it gets uploaded. If you're on the dev branch of the alpha, in a week or so, we'll start seeing content trickling through as we test it and make sure everything's working okay. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Have you ever thought about getting this bad boy on consoles?
Well, it's been really interesting seeing E3 this year has been huge with Xbox One and PS4. Very interesting to hear them moving towards sort of more community-driven content and such like, and some of the hardware looks really nice. But really, PC's where our heart is. That's where you go for a community right now. Like, if you want to make content, which is a huge part of our game, you get on the PC and you make it. If you want to have a real online community where you make missions, you join a bunch of buddies, like 60 guys, you go on the PC and do that. And that's where Arma 3 is. And like I said, as a small team, we make choices and we focus on the PC, make it as good as we possibly can.
Awesome. J. Crow, thank you very much for coming here and showing us Arma 3. We've got your buddy Dean Hall coming in tomorrow to show off DayZ, and that's tomorrow on GameSpot's Stage 2 at E3. Thanks to everyone who's been tuning in all day. We've had an absolute blast. We've had massive numbers this year of you tuning in and talking to us on Twitter and on the comments and whatnot. We really appreciate it, so stick around. Our penultimate day is finished, but we'll be back tomorrow with Day 3 of GameSpot Stage 2 at E3 2013. See you then.